When I grow up, I want to be a pretty girl. Be somebody baby, be somebody world. Be somebody lady, be somebody girl. That be so amazing. Man, that's the kind of thing can have you going crazy. I used to want to be a bad chick. I was 12 dreaming about going plastic. Brazilian butt lift, tummy tuck tragic. Every night I used to dream I gotta have it. I gotta have this. But I ain't never had nobody tell me I was pretty. And if they did, I couldn't take it and I saw the pity. I wasn't ranked with the beautiful. I wasn't even qualified to rank with the usual, the beautiful, exotic, fine, a mystique. And when they made their list, I was the second at least. They call that girl fine and they call me a beast. I promise this the truth, this how my life used to be. Now do the pretty girl rock. Yeah, yeah. You ain't a pretty girl, stop. Stop. Now do the pretty girl rock. Yeah, yeah. You ain't a pretty girl, stop. Stop. Pretty face, but I'ma always be beautiful. With pretty fades, I'ma always be beautiful. Yeah, 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 cause God made me beautiful. Pretty face, but I'ma always be beautiful. Pretty face, but I'ma always be beautiful. With pretty fades, I'ma always be beautiful. Yeah, 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 cause God made me beautiful. Pretty face, but I'ma always be beautiful. Pretty face, pretty face. Pretty girls rock, ugly girls kick them. If you can relate, then you probably were a victim. Victim of society, victim of the lies that we planted in our daughters. That the guys gotta pick them. Well, we all have a will and we all wanna choose. And if I had a twin, she would get a choice too. She would tell you that the beauty system's wicked and got rising up of people who gon' fix it. Now do the pretty girl rock. Yeah, yeah. You ain't a pretty girl, stop. Stop. Now do the pretty girl.
All right, okay. So we ready to get this conversation started. We are live. I'm gonna wait for a few minutes to hop on. Then we can get started. So we are live. If you're watching this, make sure that you share it. You can share it out to everybody. I think we're live. Yes, we are live. All right, so I want to introduce all of you all and then just do a quick intro, you know, where you're from and yeah, why you're participating in this topic today. So I'm Aisha Francis, born and raised here in Chicago. And I'm actually hosting this conversation and really looking forward to just engaging into this topic with you all. And yeah, so Brittany, tell us who you are, where you're from. Oh, hold on, let me make sure. There we go. Now we can hear you. Okay. Go ahead.
I'm Brittany Lilly from Detroit, and Aisha and I have recently had a conversation about colorism, racism, and all that, so she asked me to be a part of it.
Cool. And then Corinne. Oh, hold on. There you go. You have to unmute yourself.
Got it. There you go. I'm Corinne. I'm from Chicago. Been here pretty much my entire life. I've been knowing Asa since she was a little girl. Definitely, you know, I'm thankful to be able to have been a part of her life through her young years, growing up to be her youth leader. And she actually asked me to be a part of the conversation, and I was very delighted to do so.
And Miss Drika Will, that video that I played at the beginning, that's Drika Will's song, Pretty Face. I think it relates to the topic that we're talking about tonight. So introduce yourself, Drika.
Yes, I go by the name of Drika Will, or if you want to use my government name, it's Rodrika. I'm an artist. I'm from South Florida, Fort Lauderdale, Florida. How did I meet Aisha? I met Aisha last year at a conference called Legacy. It was an amazing conference. She was one of the judges. She was super encouraging and had a lot of insight. And we're going to be talking about this topic today that I'm super excited about. I actually talked about it recently, a couple weeks ago, with somebody else along the topic of, you know, the whole Pretty Fades experience, the song that you guys got to hear. And colorism, racism definitely falls underneath that category. So it's definitely relevant.
Cool. And then last but not least, Sierra Hayes.
Hello, everyone. My name is Sierra Hayes, but people call me Cece. I am an HR business partner by trade, a mother of 3, a wife of 11 years. I was born and raised in the south suburbs of Chicago. So I was born in Harvey World. And I'm a millennial. So I guess I'll be coming from that perspective.
Yeah, cool. Well, I want to thank you all. Like I said, I think this is a necessary conversation. And I think one of the things that I've noticed just in 2020, I've never seen so many public conversations about racism and colorism like I have, like within the past like 5 years or so, especially now. And I think people just becoming more aware. And maybe like in the past, I've had experiences with racism or microaggressions and things like that, but I didn't have the language or the terms really to label it, to be able to identify it. But now I'm aware of it. So I kind of wanted to guide our time and just to hear from you all. And so we know like the roots, right, from slavery all the way up until now, they still have effects today. And
Right.
specifically, I want to focus on colorism because I think that we've all had experiences with it. So one of the things, and we could just kind of go around, I'll start with you, Sierra. So when I want to like ask, when you were, you know, young or whenever at some point in your life, how old were you when you first heard the labels like light skin, brown skin, dark skin, like all of those different complexion distinctions? When did you first hear those labels? And then when did you first kind of notice your complexion or what was communicated to you just about color?
I think I've always heard the labels, or as far back as I can remember. It's not like there's, you know, an age in adolescence where I remember first hearing it. I feel as though light skin, dark skin, brown skin, caramel, all those terms have always been used. It wasn't until maybe I was in grade school where I noticed that you know, we would call ourselves Black, but my grandmother would use the term colored. And so, yeah, I feel as though that type of language has always been a part, of our, you know, our language, or as far as my family, my friends, those that are close to me. Now, it wasn't until maybe high school where I realized people are treated differently based on color, or people may not like you or assume certain things about you because of color.
Yeah.
I remember hearing kids tell me, and this may have been a younger, like prior to high school, in grade school, like, you think you're better because you're light skinned. And I'm like, I can't control my color. So people would put their own projections on me, and I wasn't quite sure where that was coming from. And it wasn't until I got older that I realized this is a systemic issue. But that language has always been a part of the people who I've been around vocabulary.
For sure. For sure.
Yeah.
What about you, Drika?
Yeah, I would say the same thing as Sierra. Like, it was kind of like a normalized thing. So I can't really pinpoint when I think I first started hearing it. I probably like noticed my skin color difference. I mean, okay, so like my grandmother, she's light skinned. And then my mom, from then on, like, cause my grandfather's really dark, like colors just mix. So my mom's a little bit lighter than me, like maybe like a caramel color. And then my dad is really black. But that stuff never really stood out to me. And I have cousins that are half white. Like their moms are white, dads are black. The only time I think it really stood out to me was like when my grandma would tell my light skin, or my mixed cousins specifically, because they're the only ones that's light skinned, she would tell them that they're pretty, and she would encourage them. And it wasn't that she would tell us that we were ugly. She just would never say that to her grandchildren that had darker skin. And a lot of our dads were also from the islands, and they're jet black men from like the Caribbean. So we never got encouragement from my grandmother telling us how pretty we were, how cute we were. So I just automatically like tagged it to my skin tone. And then, but other than that, like, I mean, we just, I guess in school, elementary school, we would call each other light skin, dark skin, but I don't think I really have an age of when it first started. Well, for my culture. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks. What about you, Corinne?
Oh, wow. So I'm the older of the bunch. So, you know, I think for me, again, it goes back to adolescent, is when I first started to notice like the difference in color shades, things like that. And Sierra really made me laugh because when they would, you know, my parents, they didn't call us like black, they called us like Negro. And so I think it was more because of I was born more in the 60s, and they were, you know, just, you know, in a sense, I wouldn't say coming out of the slavery times, but, you know, my grandma and all of them grew up in the South. And so that's what they would call you. And so it wasn't a distinction of black or, you know, but you could tell the difference because I had an aunt who was part Indian, and she was very light, very beautiful hair. And so I started to notice more in my adolescence the difference. And then, you know, my parents, I remember my brother saying to me one time, like, you know, they switch babies in the hospital. And I was like, what? And because I was much lighter than all my siblings. And so, yeah, that just always stood out for me. But for the most part, I would say like more in the adolescent is when I began to hear the light skin, brown skin, and even seeing it as a culture.
And Brittany, what about you?
For me, I would say I was maybe 10, 11, going from elementary school to middle school, when mostly I would hear it in school or from kind of family members start making those distinctions about, well, I mostly heard it for being teased for being dark skinned, but it probably started around like 10 or 11 years old.
For me, I'll probably say that since I was a little girl, I always like to say I'm light skinned, depending on who you ask. Not that it really matters to me, but it really matters for a lot of people. When I was younger, I used to get called white girl by my family, like some of my cousins and stuff, because I couldn't dance. I had rhythm, but I couldn't really dance. Or they were like, "You so yellow, you know, light bright." So I would hear all those terms, and then there would be assumptions. When I was 13, my family moved from Inglewood to West Inglewood, and there were other girls my age in the neighborhood, and you know, we wanted to make friends and stuff like that. And so one girl came over, and she was like, "Oh, you know, you real cool. I thought you would have been, you know, stuck up, blah blah." And I'm like, "Why would you think that? Oh, you know, light skin, long hair, blah blah blah." And I'm like, "Why would you think that? You don't even know me." So it's like those types of like assumptions, right? Like you get labeled. And I sent you guys this article that I thought was interesting because it was talking about where it all began, like during slavery times. Because even in the Caribbean, I've watched a lot of Afro-Latino people talk about this too, like how colorism plays out in the Caribbean too as well. And it seems to be an issue like within, you know, communities of color, knowing that it's stemming from slavery. And I was reading that article that I sent you guys, and it was saying that back then, you know, we had that, you know, the house Negro, the field Negro, like you guys are familiar with that terminology. And then how it's like lighter skinned blacks, especially if they were like mixed race and they could pass in a sense, had certain privileges, right? Connected to that, being closer to white. You know, from in white people's eyes and stuff like that. And so this really stems from a place that is, you know, rooted in racism, that, you know, they say like white is right, or if you black, get back, and you kind of see how that plays out in the culture. I've even remember hearing stories about some lighter skinned people not wanting to go out in the sun to get tan because they didn't want to get darker. So I've heard things like that like my whole life, like stemming from just being a little child. And even on my father's side of the family, his mother is like white, like she looked like any white woman. And I remember her mother telling all her children, because they were all fair skinned, like not to marry anybody dark, right? Because she didn't want them to like have dark children. All of them ended up marrying somebody dark skinned, you know, and it's interesting kind of seeing how we, even as a culture and as a people, have kind of played into this. Just one of the reasons I wanted to discuss it, right? Because I don't think I've ever had like a discussion like the one I had with Brittany initially about this topic, which goes to my second question, right? What experiences kind of stand out in your mind when it comes to this topic that really shaped you, like how you view yourself from skin to your features? Because I know we've all had experience with it, but how did it kind of shape your understanding, or maybe how you see yourself or how you see Black people in general? Maybe started with Brittany, then we can go.
Yeah, I'll go. So okay, so the question is
Are there any
people.
experiences that stand out in your mind as it relates to like your complexion that kind of shaped how you saw yourself?
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah.
So as I kind of talked about in like into elementary, going into middle school, that's when I kind of start hearing comments like, oh, you know, you Black, and kind of equating being Black to ugly. And so that was just really a common thing to hear. And so I know for me, you talked about kind of how you asked, how did I see myself? So I view myself as like, oh, if I'm dark skin, that must mean I'm ugly. So just kind of equating it to that. So that's kind of how it affected how I saw myself from what I heard growing up. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and probably up until like a few years ago, I remember like I would come home when I was like in elementary school or middle school, and I would like pour bleach on the paper towel and like try to bleach my skin, like thinking it would make me lighter and stuff. But obviously that never worked. But it wasn't until probably like 2 years ago when I started seeing more Black women on TV that looked like me. That was like, wow, like I think I really like my skin complexion, or like, you know, dark skin is not ugly. So representation, I think, was helpful in me kind of starting to change the way I saw myself.
Muted, Aisha.
Any experiences for you, Corinne, that stand out in your mind, just about like maybe that shaped how you saw yourself or just your complexion?
It does. So like high school, I would say was the most time I would say that really shaped me looking, because I mean, growing up as an adolescent, like we mostly played with our family cousins, so you really didn't get a lot of, I mean, you had kids that always had that I'll say meanness in them and would make comments. But I think high school more for me, because I wanted to fit in. I wanted to be a part. And it seemed like all the cool people, especially the girls, were light skinned, skinny, or, you know, just small in their, you know, waist or weight. And so you want to be a part of that. And I think that shaped me of wanting to like really be a part of that group, because it seemed like only the people that were light skinned or small or, you know, things like that were like the cool people. But if you were overweight and you know, were darker, it was like they didn't make you feel like you could be a part of that. And I was overweight pretty much my whole life. And so I struggled with that, not just from a complexion standpoint, but even from a weight standpoint. So I had two things going, you know, wrong for me. I was darker and I was overweight. And so I believe that really shaped my experiences as far as like how I saw myself, you know, in my high school days.
Aisha, can we ask each other questions, or wait? Can we wait, do it at the end?
We can do it at the end, yeah. Yeah. What about you, Drika?
I didn't really have, to be honest, maybe it's because of like who I grew up around, like it was so normalized that I didn't notice it. But I had more issues, like I guess with my features, my Black features. So like when I was younger, obviously now I have Black girl features, like I have, or whatever Black people features they would say, you know, bigger nose, wider nose, full lips. And I would actually get made fun of for my nose when I was a kid, like because I had a big nose. They would call me Big Nose in elementary school, but I actually grew into my nose eventually. But that was something that like bothered me, and I was like super, super insecure about that. And like Corinne like that. Corinne was saying, you know, kids are cruel, so they just say like the harshest things. I think I maybe once thought about bleaching my skin, but I wasn't really because I wasn't the darkest one out of all my mom's kids. I don't think I was that bothered by my skin color, because I actually had a younger sister. She's darker. She's much darker than me. She's probably closer to my dad's color. And I will say, you know, it probably did affect me a little bit. I'm lying. It's just in a different way. I used to think like, well, at least I'm not that dark, you know, which is like horrible to think in comparison to my little sister. And the thing is like my relatives would always tell her, you know, she's a beautiful little dark skinned girl, or she's beautiful for a little chocolate girl. And my sister, she's really pretty, but you know, just to hear for a dark girl, for a dark skinned girl, and then, but you at the same time, I'm over here comparing myself with like, okay, well at least I'm not that Black, as though it takes away from, you know, everything else I have going on. So those probably were my little insecurity experiences with my skin color and my Black features. So yeah.
What about you, Sierra? Me and Sierra have had some interesting conversations because Sierra works in HR, and we can get into this a little later. It'll probably be a little off topic, but me and Brittany initially got this conversation started because I was saying how I've had experiences where with job interviews, I felt, and this may not be a thing in reality, but somewhere deep down inside, I always feel this pressure to quote unquote whiteify. Right? Like right now, my hair is in a twist out, you know, partially is neat, is, you know, and even if I had like some Senegalese twists or box braids or something, I just wouldn't go into an interview like that. And maybe I could, you know, I asked my other friend, my African-American friend, I asked her, I said, would you go into an interview, you know, with your box braids? She was like, yes. She said, yes, I would. And she was like, they don't hire me with my hair like this, and that's on them. Like, but I wouldn't, because I would just feel like I perceived, right? When you're a Black woman, you are perceived a certain way when you have your certain way. So there have been times like, all right, I'm taking the box braids down, I'm gonna do a nice bun, or I have a bunch of wigs. I will wear my interview wigs. And then once I get the job, I get in the door and start working, then I'll rock my braids, my twist outs and stuff like that. But usually I have the interview wigs ready, because I just have this, like in the back of my mind, I'm like, I just don't want anything to affect me. But I mean, I would like to hear from you all on that. But Sierra, I want you to, are there any things that kind of like stand out in your mind, like any experiences that really shaped you, like, this is how people perceive me, or?
Well, so for me to answer that question, I would actually be looking back in retrospect and recognizing that we've been brainwashed, right? And so as children coming up, we don't even realize that we're playing into a hand and we're pitted against each other. So like, as I mentioned before, you know, my skin color didn't impact me really at home. Not too much, sometimes a little bit. Like, you know, you mentioned, Aisha, where you would hear, don't put the baby in the sun so they don't get too dark, whereas I would hear, put the baby in the sun so they
So they
can
can get some color, yeah.
right. So I would hear the opposite of that. And when my color would impact me, like socially, it would be where kids, and not necessarily friends, but other kids at school would say, you think this about yourself, before they even met me. And so that was really frustrating, because I think that impacted my self-esteem to an extent. It's like, why is it that people don't like me because of my color when I haven't done anything? But of course, looking back on that, if, you know, lighter skin is given preferential treatment in a white America and darker skin is not, then if folks that are darker complected are being hurt, then they may then lash back out at the lighter skin. You know, that's kind of how I'm looking at it now. But we were being pitted against each other, and it's really, really unfortunate. The more of an impact that I have is, as you mentioned now, Aisha, with me working in corporate America, and I've worked in many industries from education, healthcare, banking, financial services. It's more, I believe there's more preferential treatment in corporate. I think
Mm,
that still exists, right?
mm,
So I think coming in with lighter skin, I would get preferential treatment over someone with darker skin. And that's really unfortunate. Another way is if I use or if I see, because sometimes I'm just watching other people who are climbing the corporate ladder, if you embrace white or what's considered European like beauty standards. So if you
mm,
straighten your hair, you know, if you lighten it, maybe you have some streaks, or you blonde or something like that. And so just like you were saying, Aisha, whenever I would go on an interview, I would not wear my hair, you know, in the fro. So for the other folks that are on the phone right now, they're in some box braids. When they are not in the box braid, I am full on fro. But that is more recent. I have been embracing that. It's more of like a rebel attitude. I go into work with my fro ready for somebody to say something to me, whereas it took a journey to get there. So this year, for an example, I would go into an interview with my box braids or with a twist out, whereas if you asked me this maybe 5 years ago, I probably wouldn't. I would go to the Egyptians to get my hair straightened before going into an interview.
mm.
So
That's interesting. As far as experiences that stand out in my mind, actually the place that you and I used to work together, I used to,
can you believe that was 10 years ago?
yeah, I can't believe I'm this old now. Sierra and I used to work together, and I remember going back to my teenage years, right? I always wanted to have a nice silky wrap, right? I'll go to the, salon, get my hair straight with my hair in a wrap. I wanted to look like Aaliyah, just like a lot of other, how my hair is silky. She had her
Yep.
eye, I didn't have a hair shape to have it over my eye like that, but I think I would just get like the deep side part and wear a wrap. And so that's how I used to wear my hair when I first entered like corporate America office environments. And then I decided to go natural. I'm like, man, I really want to, because this was when like a lot of Black women were just going natural. So I decided to go natural. And then I walked into the office and my supervisor at the time says, man, Aisha, you used to wear your hair all nice and silky. He's like, now you wear it all like nappy, like in a fro. And this was a white man saying this to me. So I remember he said that. And I think I don't remember how I responded. I don't think I had like a clap back or anything like that. I think I just kind of gave him a look like, really? Like, you just had the audacity to just say that? And then I just kind of like went back to my desk. But I remember thinking like, man, I wish I would have told him something, but I think I was trying to be professional and I didn't want to be perceived as like, the angry Black woman or whatever. I didn't want to, be perceived that way, but it did make me feel some
A
type of
certain
way.
way.
Yeah. So I remember that. And then, growing up, like my brother is, younger than me and my sister's a baby. Me and my sister both are lighter, have lighter complexion, and my brother's darker. And then growing up, he used to always say how he had like a complex about being, darker, and used to wish that he was lighter. I've even heard comments like, oh, well, you're not really Black, Aisha, as if Black is relegated to a certain type of look or complexion of person. I think the beauty of African Americans and just Black people in general is that we run the full gamut of like straight hair, more coarse texture, all types of complexion, shape, sizes, hair texture, all of it, right? We, from the lightest of the light to the darkest and then everything in between. And there's so much beauty in that culture. And then, do you guys remember the movie School Days by Spike Lee? That kind of explored like light and dark. And I remember that was the first movie that I think put it into perspective for me. That like, this country and our ugly past and history has really ruined a lot of our perspective about how we see ourselves. And that white is right, you know, which is racist, right? Were there any type of situations, right, that you all were in where, you know, because we're fast forwarding to today, we're in 2020. How have you kind of seen colorism played out, like in the media, in our culture? Like Brittany, you talked about seeing more women that look like you in the media, but now today, like how have you seen colorism kind of played out in media or just in the industry, music industry, entertainment?
I'm sorry, repeat that.
Yeah, how have you seen colorism played out, like in 2020 in our world today, like whether that be in the media, in TV, just how has it kind of like progressed, or anybody can
I
speak?
kind of like the point Sierra brought up, and I hadn't thought about that. Like you said, you notice in corporate America, the people who would get ahead, they may lighten their hair or something like that. And I think about like Beyonce. You know, I know when she came out, she had kind of like some streaks, but now she's kind of like full blonde almost, to where a lot of people don't even think she's black. In fact, I remember I think she was Indian or white roommate one time in college, and we were watching something about Beyonce, and she was like, Beyonce's Puerto Rican. And I was like, no, no, she's not. Beyonce's black. And she was like, really? But she's so pretty though. And so I think that's kind of the expectation in, to kind of get ahead. There's a certain look that you need to have and appeal. And it is the more European look. So that's kind of how I've seen it play out, I guess, in media or popular culture.
Hmm.
You know what? Brittany made me think about Michael Jackson and how he changed like his whole complexion to be able to be a part of this, societal or world that, because he did not want. I mean, he was dark, and then all of a sudden he bleached to white, and it was like, wow, like he changed his whole appearance to fit into what he thought. I guess boost, and it did, because people loved him. They loved his music. They loved everything about him. But he changed from a societal aspect to become, some totally different than what he was born to be.
Sammy Sosa too.
Yes. And so
Oh, yeah.
that's my opinion, that society, even in 2020, plays like a huge role in, how, you are viewed, or how, you're allowing yourself to change your whole of who you are, so that you would fit into this model of what the world, thinks you ought to look like. And even from what Sierra and Asia talked about, as far as like the hair, as far as like the corporate, as far as like, yeah, like me to wear red hair to an interview, like definitely probably would not get the job. So you'd have to tone it down to be able to become what you need to. And then when you get in, you do what you want. And so I get compliments about it, but I would never do that up, in the front.
Yeah.
I would even add in to what you guys are saying. I noticed, and maybe it's my eyes or something, but I noticed a lot of celebrities from when they first got in the game, their skin has gotten much lighter, and I'm just like, huh? Like maybe is they lighting on Instagram, or maybe this is something that comes with age. But I'm like, my mama's skin ain't do that, so maybe it's not. So I'm just like, I think these celebrities are like over time bleaching their skin, and thinking that our eyes aren't gonna go do a before and after. And one of them, what's his name, Charlemagne the God, the guy who does Breakfast Club.
Yeah.
He's one of them that's done it, and a lot of them. But and I think they try to like confront him about it too. But yeah, it's just crazy how, like, I don't know, just how we're willing to just, and I get it because like this with the self-esteem and insecurities, all that jazz, like it gets to your head, but the lengths that we're going to, like we're damaging our skin just to fit the mold of what somebody else says is beautiful. And that's just from one perspective. Like other parts of the world, darker skin is like gorgeous, amazing. People are standing in the sun to try and look like a lot of us. So yeah, it's just heartbreaking.
Yeah.
You,
And it's
you
pitted
know,
us against each other too.
absolutely. You know, one of the things that I believe combats it is education, right? So our media was really controlled up until more recently, and it still is controlled, right, to an extent, but there's a little bit of flexibility now that we have social media, and that we are now more of an educated generation that's coming up. Not to say we still got a long way to go, but it's like our history has been whited out. We don't know what our contributions, and when I say our, I mean, you know, melanated people contributions has been to society, and it has been great. And that plays into or feeds into why we believe that European standards of beauty has always been the better. If that's all we see, when we're looking at TV, and I'm talking about fast forward or going back in time a bit, where all you see is mostly TV shows with, you know, white folks. It's like, okay, now I'm a little kid putting a towel or a t-shirt on my head, making it look like I got all this long white hair. You know, I remember doing that as a kid, but now we have more representation in the media. But more than that, with social media, we're educating ourselves. There's more of a push for not only Black excellence and Black girl magic, but a sense of self. And I see more of us embracing our features, embracing our hair. And that's one of the things that I see is playing out in the media from a positive perspective. We are deciding that we are beautiful, and we're rolling with it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I'm hoping that continues to like pick up and continue to reach more Black folks, so that they can just be proud in what they look like, regardless of if they're really, really light or really, really dark,
Yeah.
and their features.
Even just with the whole kind of whitifying yourself, like when I was little, I remember wanting to be, my hair texture is very a rough, coarse texture. Even to get this twist out, I had to do some manipulation to it. And you know, I have my hair woes and stuff like that. But when I first went natural, and I would see a lot of like the kind of natural hair tutorials and stuff, I used to be like, man, God, why don't I have like the soft, pretty curly texture that I don't have to do nothing but just wash it and just wash and go. But I can't do that. You know, like even just not even being accustomed to my hair, you know, in its natural state. And even, you know, comments from friends and family are like, oh, I miss when you used to wear your hair straight, you know, and have it in a nice wrap and stuff like that. You should go back to that. But it's like, no, I've spent so much time, you know, picking myself apart, right? Like my nose, I grew up hating my nose because my nose was too black. Like it's too ethnic, you know, like it's not European enough or not slim enough, and kind of hating like my, you know, my body shape, like being curvy and stuff like that. Like you talked about wanting to fit the standard. And I remember hearing it was like a speech from like Malcolm X, and he was like, man, who taught you to like hate your nose and like to hate your lips and basically hate your appearance, like what you look like? And then I realized like, man, this is rooted in like deep, like that whiteness is the standard and that is the status quo. And I think just now, maybe more recently, I'm becoming more comfortable with looking in the mirror and really being like satisfied, right, with what I see. Like I'm okay with like wearing my hair like this. I never forget I was super embarrassed. I was riding the train and I had like you know how when you wear your hair natural, you might put a little spray in it, you know, to make it kind of moisturize and put it up in a high kind of ponytail. But it's kind of like wow, but it's like in the high ponytail. And I remember riding the train, and this black guy looks at me. He was like, hey, he said, what do you call that hairstyle that you have? I was like, excuse me? And he was like, what do you call that look? And I was like, it's just a ponytail. And he was like, you know what I call it? And I was like, what? He was like, the nappy look. He says it's really loud on the train. And he just starts like laughing. And I remember feeling so embarrassed and like so like small. And I was like, man, like I was really upset, you know, about that. And it's just like, man, we've really been handed down these things to kind of to hate ourselves, you know what I'm saying, and to over kind of critique ourselves that this is the standard. And it's interesting, it's like a dark person might look at a light-skinned person and be like, man, I wish I had their skin complexion, but they don't know I'm looking in the mirror, I'm picking myself apart. Oh, I hate my hair texture, I hate my nose. Like my mom said, the reason why she permed my hair when I was little, I was probably like 4 years old, was because she said
Me too.
it wouldn't hold a curl. And it don't, even to this day, like this is like nice in texture, but let me go out in the humidity, it's gone. It's just, it's completely gone. And I remember wanting to be a PCJ model, or just for me, like the relaxer. But then I was like, my features aren't white enough, right? I don't have the thin. I remember thinking, and I'm like, where did that come from? No one taught me that. And even like Corinne said about Michael Jackson, like, he did like a lot of interviews where he said his dad would tease him for his nose. Like a lot of people would pick on it because there's no, he just began to hate himself. So it's like, these are things that we have to, like you said, like, how do we kind of correct this and reclaim that beauty, that God-given beauty? I want to shout out to all the people who are watching right now. I see y'all comments. Definitely want to acknowledge you guys. Hey, Janie, shout out to Janie. Cheryl Benson, thank you for chiming in. Oh, Corinne, I saw that you responded to her. It says, you're smart, you're pretty, but you're too dark or too heavy and your hair does not fit the standard. Yeah, that's what we've been told.
Yeah.
We got a question. Go ahead, sir.
Oh, no, I just wanted to chime in when you were talking about the hair part. I guess for me, over the last few years, like, I'm really young, you guys. I'm only 24. But over the last couple of years, I just have had to teach myself how to, like, really love myself. Well, God has been teaching me how to, like, love myself more and just embrace who he created me to be, in, like, just the little intricate details of how I look. So even down to the hair, it like Sierra was saying earlier, we got to do our research and get educated. So I've been doing more research about Black hair because we are just starting to get more information about our hair textures and types. So we're like not even on the 4C, 3B, like all that stuff. Like now it's like, what's your hair porosity? What kind of products does your hair like? You know, does your hair need more oil? Does it need more water? Like, so I've just been really getting into more of that kind of stuff. So that I can know, like, okay, like what does this girl's hair like? Even if there is another girl with natural hair in the room. And just really learning to embrace my Blackness. Cause like I said, like the society that we live in today, it is, well, we all know this is very whitewashed, and they don't teach us about our hair. They don't teach us about what products are good for us, for crying out loud. Most of the products that they make ain't really for us. So it's like, we kind of got to really dig and dive in there and, you know, dig in all that history that they buried and, you know, kind of washed away with our ancestors, unfortunately. But it's a beautiful experience and journey. I can give y'all a plug too of a girl, anybody with natural hair that's struggling. I got a plug. She's very she's a chemist, a natural hair chemist or something, like, I don't know. But she's very well educated about Black hair, and it's been helping me with my little journey. I know I'm a little rough, but I got y'all if y'all need the plug.
Thanks for
Instagram.
Yes, she does. I don't know if y'all maybe you've heard of her, the Green Beauty.
Now put it in the chat so we can check out her information. We got some people's comments I want to acknowledge. This is from Infinity. Shout out to Infinity. She says, have you all seen the Vanity Fair cover with Viola Davis? I think I have. Is that the one where she has I think she just wore her natural hair and people went crazy over it.
Or is that the one with the back out? There's one with the back out.
Yeah, which one, Infinity? Because I'm not sure which one that is. It's interesting. My dad told me this story of a white model in the 60s or 70s named Bo Derek, who wore these braids, right, with beads, and people went like crazy over, like white people went bananas over her wearing these braids with beads. And it was like, but it's like when a Black woman does it, it's like nothing, no fanfare, like, oh, she's just acting. But then when his white women, you know, did that, it was like, oh my gosh, so unique, so beautiful. And it's like, even that, right? Like, even that is communicating something. And you brought it up, Sierra, and I kind of want to address this too. Like, how do we correct this? And I remember my niece came to Chicago. We kept her for a summer when she was a little kid, and she got really, really tanned. So when we took them back home, one of our family members was just looking at her. It's like, man, you got dark. Oh my gosh, you got so dark. And I don't know that she meant that like intentionally, because I would compare it to, you know, how you might see someone that you've always known to be thin, and then you see them years later, they gain a lot of weight, and you'd be like, man, she got big. Not that you say that, but you probably think it. I don't know if it was like that, or if it was like, you got so dark. Like it was like, I don't know if it was like a negative thing. And I just wonder, you know, what that does, you know, to a person, you know, when you say it in that tone of voice, and it seems like something of disdain, which again, like even we as Black people, we have fed into that, you know. And I try to be intentional. I don't have children yet, but I have my niece and nephew, and I always try to say, man, your skin is so beautiful, like to really affirm them, right, so that they don't let the world. Because, like, man, like you said, Rodrika, kids are really cruel. The world is cruel. And, you know, when you're younger, you think you saw roses and stuff, and you grow up, you go to school, and kids just rip you to shreds. Like, we live in a really cold world, but I think we all have to do our part to kind of affirm each other. So what do you guys think about that? How do we, you know, how have you kind of corrected your perception of yourself, or is it still a work in progress for you? How are you kind of reclaiming beauty?
I'll jump in. So for me, it took a long time because, and I don't want to go back too far, but I would say growing up, you know, without being affirmed or without being told, like you say, like, you know, that you're beautiful, or, you know, you are smart, you're, you know, all these things, it developed a stigma, you know. So for, you know, many years, and I think it wasn't until I was in my 30s that I began to like start to rethink how I saw myself, but even still struggled a lot. And so I would say now more toward my 40s is when I began to, you know, and that was more when me coming into Christ and understanding. And what had came to mind was Psalms 139, when he says that how we are fearfully and wonderfully made. And he formed us, you know, like just understanding the dynamics of, you know, God forming me. Like he knew what I would look like, the color I would be, the type of hair I would have, you know, all these different features about me. And if I one day said to myself, if God formed me and he loves me, you know, and love the creation that he made in me, who am I to look at me differently? And so that was the beginning of being able to like rethink how I saw myself. And I had to work at telling myself I'm beautiful, because like my parents grew up in the 60s. They grew up when the change in slavery and all these things were happening. And so their parents didn't, you know, affirm them. So they only did what they could do and give that to you because that's what they knew. And so as years went on, it changed, yes, but it only changed because the world changes. So it was only then that I began to, like I say, know that, you know, I was better than that. Like I didn't have to compare myself to people, you know, because it was always this comparison thing going on. And I was like, no, that's not who God made me to be. God made me to be beautiful. And so I have to tell myself. And the more I did that, the more I became more confident, where some people would call it arrogance, and it's not. It's because you become confident in the person of who you are. So I just wanted to kind of throw that out there.
Yeah, anybody else want to speak? Like, how are you just renewing that perception, like those things that were handed down to us from slavery, rooted in racism? Like, how have you kind of shed that negative perception? If anyone else want to.
I can hop in.
Yeah.
So like as I mentioned before, it's the educational piece, right?
Mhm.
So looking and learning about my history helps a lot because it puts things into perspective, into proper perspective. Because as we all know, like our history has been whited out, and it's, you know, European standard of beauty is just white, and so education is a big piece of that. Another thing is really embracing my own beauty. I love Black people. Like, I am passionate about my people. And so it's easier now for me to embrace anything Black, even on myself. So like I said, with my hair, it's a full-on fro when it's not in these braids because that's my way of being rebellious against the system. Another thing that I do though is I compliment people, like strangers that I see in public. So if I see, you know, another sister, she could have the darkest skin or the lightest skin, and she rocking it, and her skin is glowing, and her mane is big, or it could be straight hair, it could be braids. I'd be like, "You looking good, sis." And I've never not complimented someone and they didn't smile. They always smile. And my husband be like, you just be complimenting strangers? Yeah, why not? Why not? If they beautiful, tell them. And then I would say one of the most important ways that I'm trying to combat this is through my children. So I'm looking at how we were influenced growing up, and I just don't want that same type of influence over my children. So some people may find this odd, but I guard what they watch. So as you know, the little kids right now are really into YouTube. Well, they tend to watch other kids playing or acting out stuff, and it's usually a bunch of white families. Y'all better go find some Black families on YouTube if you want to watch that. I need that to be balanced. You cannot be watching TV, watching your tablet, watching media, and all you're looking at is white excellence. What about Black excellence? So I remember one time I saw my oldest daughter was looking at like this video of these it was some white cheerleaders cheerleading. And I was like, you know, Black people cheerlead too. And I went and I found her YouTube video and I showed it. I was like, look how good we are, right? So I just want them to see that we're good, not just as well, but I just don't want that to be, I don't want whiteness to be the standard for them. So I definitely guard what they watch, but more than that, I also like reinforce our beauty to them. So like, you know, my kids' hair is natural. I've never put a perm in their hair. Whereas to your point, Aisha, I had a relaxer in my hair when I was 4. So I've never relaxed their hair. Their hair is natural. Embrace it. Your nose is beautiful. Your full lips is beautiful. All of my children are darker than me. I'm probably the lightest person in my family. My dad is dark, not dark, but like middle complected brown. My mom is probably your complexion, Aisha. And my siblings are a little darker than me. Everyone, my husband is darker than me. My children came out darker than me, but I call that out as beauty. It's all pretty, not just the darkness, but me too. And I have to remind myself because I have been called white girl, etc. So just embracing anything Black, anything that connects us to our culture, I embrace and reinforce with my children.
Anybody? We got some comments. Shout out to this is Tiffany Monique. She said truth. She said, I'm light and have had an interesting journey to embracing every part of me. It's still a journey. Infinity, because we're talking about reclaiming beauty. It really is a mindset shift, learning to see the beauty in yourself. Shout out to Infinity. Oh, shout out to Stephanie. What's up, Steph? Steph said, thank you for being vulnerable and sharing your stories with us. It is needed, and I'm so grateful to listen and learn. Your voices matter. Amen. Shout out to everybody who's been watching. Feel free to share this on Facebook. You can share it out to your friends. We want you guys to chime in. And if you have questions, feel free to submit your questions. We love to answer them. Infinity says, yes, dark skin on display, back out in big luscious fro. Oh, so she's talking about Viola Davis. Yeah, I feel like that shocked the world. And somebody mentioned, oh, Brittany, you were talking about Beyonce. One of the funniest, it was a spoof on Saturday Night Live, and they had a skit about the day Beyonce turned black. You could probably find this on YouTube, but it was hilarious. And it was like this skit about the day Beyonce turned black. And I think it was when she came out with the Formation song, and they showed like it was white people in this office environment, and they started going crazy and like crying, and they were shocked and tripping. They was like, wait a minute, Beyonce's black? Like, because she was really referencing her color, her complexion, you know, blackness, of being like black and proud. And they weren't like accustomed to that. And to me, it was very telling because, you know, again, if whiteness has been the standard for so long in America and definitely in the industry, like you said, Sierra, like me wearing my hair in a fro, that's challenging the status quo. Like it's an act of defiance almost. And have you all kind of, like for me, I think a part of me reclaiming beauty first started with my hair. Because I always hated my hair. My hair is what I would have considered nappy. It's not, you know, it's really hard to work with. And I had to learn to work with my hair and to take care of my hair. I think loving myself first started with, how do I care for my hair? Educating myself on caring for my hair, learning how to, you know, style it and you know, really just take care of it just overall. I think that was one of the things. And I think kind of learning to be more, like you said, affirming of myself and of other people. Shout out to, this is Cheryl Benson. She said, yes, once you really understand and believe that you're made in the image of God, you will be set free. I love Viola, unapologetically black. I wonder if that was an act of defiance for her, wearing her hair in a fro. I'm sure that it was. My next question I want to ask you ladies is, you know, what did you see beauty as back then, compared to what you deem as beautiful now? Like, what was your kind of standard or interpretation of beauty back then compared to like now? How do you see it?
I think
Oh, go ahead.
I would envision probably like a woman, if I were to categorize it to a woman. Back then, as a child, it would be blonde hair, light eyes, you know, very small, like slim type of a look. That was pretty like Clueless. Like that was beauty. Like the main character of Clueless. Now, when I think of beauty, I think of, and maybe this was, I don't remember if it was a Dove commercial or something, but it was an array of women from light to dark in varying sizes of small to, you know, very full figured. That is beauty to me. Like straight hair, braids, fro, twist out, some color, some dark hair, just an array. To me, that's beauty. Just to see like a spectrum of blackness. So that's a big difference from the Clueless look.
Yeah. Adrika?
I'll say for me, it was, you know, hourglass shape, tiny waist, light skin, long hair, loose curls. But now, just, you know, when I think of beautiful, not saying that I'm the upper tone, but I think of myself. I think of the features that God gave me, and the variety, especially in the Black community, or just in the human race in general. Like God was just so specific and so detailed with each and every human being that he made, from every tribe and nation. I just think it's just beautiful because even though, you know, as groups and as wholes, like we look the same, I guess, to the other groups, but you know, each group has their own like detailed, intricate set of people. So all similar to what Sierra's saying, pretty much what she's saying, like all the different shades of all the people spread across the world. I just think it's beautiful. And just to touch back to what you said about the reclaiming the beauty part, I think somebody said it earlier, just resetting our minds, and getting out of our heads what we thought beauty was back then, and just like claiming the beauty that exists now, like the current beauty that has always been there, but has been, you know, kind of like pushed to the side and been told, well, no, that's not beautiful. This is beautiful. Having these features is beautiful. Talking this way is beautiful. Dressing this way is beautiful. Even within the Black community, I know for a lot of, I'll say for myself, I grew up being the awkward Black girl. So that was a problem for me growing up, being around other Black people. So just embracing like who you are as an individual and how God made you, like, period. And I know that's like kind of like a general statement, but that's something big when you can accept who you are for what you are and just go, okay, like nothing really about me as far as, I don't know, as the way that I talk or the way that I speak or the way that I wouldn't say the way that I carry myself, but things that you just can't change about yourself, just really like letting that go and just embracing that is who you are, and owning it. And when other people see that, like they're going to want that. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Brittany or Corinne, any feedback on that? Just
yeah, and so I agree with the other ladies, because what I think about back in the day, beauty was, you know, how you look, you know, as far as like she said having an hour shape, but it was more of a Coca-Cola bottle shape. You know, back in you know, like that was beauty, and having long hair or being light skinned. I had a friend who was very light skinned. She was mixed. Her grandma, and I thought about this as I was processing through this week. Her grandma used to buy all her clothes from Talbert's, and you know, that to me, I just thought she was like the most beautiful person ever, like because she dressed nice and all these things. But if I fast forward to this time, it wasn't about those things, and it wasn't about her being a small girl or dressing nice. And today I look at beauty as being, again, all the arrays of colors, but also beauty is the heart of a person. And so being able to see that heart of a person, because your beauty comes from what's in your heart. And so I love being able to see the heart of someone just, you know, come out and flourish. And it just illuminates who they are as an individual. Because where your heart is, definitely, that is the true essence of beauty. And so for me, that's how I see beauty now, you know, not so much in the appearance side of it, but more about like, I want to talk to you. I want to get to know you. I'm not gonna, you know, jump to conclusions, as, you know, we spoke about earlier, like, you know, making a judgment on some that you don't know. Like, I want to know that person. And so that's where I'm able to really see the true beauty of that individual. So I think that's the difference for me now. My mindset is totally different. It's not about the outward appearance, but it's what's, you know, in the heart.
yeah. Yeah, thanks for that. What about you, Brittany?
So I think if I'm honest, well, okay, I guess I'll go back a little bit and start with the question about reclaiming the beauty and how I've shaped it. I think one thing I've realized is that living so many places like down south and things is that like, oh, not everybody around the world sees dark skin as a bad thing. So just being different places and seeing different people's perspective has helped change me. But I think if I'm honest, I still for the most part see the same standard of beauty as I did then that I do now.
Mm. Yeah. Me, I'm trying to think of, I want to say, at least for me, because I've had the experience of being in both worlds, right? So I grew up all Black, South Side Chicago. And then when I was in 8th grade, moved to all white West suburbs in Illinois. So I went from being around all Black people, you know, to being around all white people and then being the only Black kid in the class. And I would say that that was probably the first time in my life where I experienced racism and microaggressions like that, which really shaped me. I think back then, at least I could say on a positive note, this was before social media, YouTube. I had a lot of Black standards of Black beauty, right? I remember seeing In Living Color and seeing Takia Crystal Kima playing all these crazy roles and stuff like that. And she was a brown skinned sister. She used to wear her hair wraps and all that. I remember that. I remember because the PCJ and the Just For Me models were Black girls from different, like, you know, complexions and stuff like that. And they had the straight hair. And then it was Aaliyah. You know, Aaliyah had she had the silky straight hair, but that was somebody I would consider beautiful. Or like Jasmine Godwin, I think of A Different World and all those different like cast of characters and stuff on there. I don't know for me if it was a particular complexion, maybe more about like certain types of features, like European features, and like you said, Drika, the softer, more curlier hair texture, something like that. I think now, like Corinne said, what's on the inside will definitely show on the outside. And I think about like, man, God intentionally created me with these features, with this hair texture, with this complexion. Why should I hate what God created? Like, why should I shake my fist at God and be like, why did you make me this way? Instead of being grateful that he showcases all this beauty within the diversity of just culture, just within Black culture and just within people. And and again, like me and my sister, like the way we kind of grew up, it was like we loved chocolate. Like we used to always say, "Oh, I hope I have some beautiful chocolate babies." Like loving and adoring, you know, like darker skin, and so I think that now I'm so grateful to see a lot of this celebration of Black culture, and I think it really speaks to just the past and just being a people that have been subjugated, that have been demeaned and disrespected. It's like now, okay, I want to take ownership of like how I look and like who we are, and to change and switch this narrative. Because I don't know that I want to, when I have children, I don't know that I want to have conversations with them like, all right, you got to be extra early. You got to like run faster. You got to be smarter and all this because you're Black. While I know that's a reality, I don't know that necessarily that's something that I want to communicate to them. I want to be like, you're beautiful because you are beautiful. You know what I'm saying? You're smart because you are smart. Like, I want to be able to have those conversations. And I think even if I don't have that conversation with them, like because you're Black, you got to do this, do that. The world has a funny way of teaching them their place in a sense. Like, I feel like they will experience it whether they want to or not, just like I did. My parents didn't sit me down and be like, look, Aisha, because you Black, because you look like this is how it's going to be for you. Life taught me that. And I think even now there's just a lot of things. I wish I could be like my friend, even to this day, to be like, oh, I'm going in there with my hair like this. And if they don't hire me, that's their loss. But I haven't gotten there yet. I haven't gotten to that point where I'm comfortable being like, I still have my interview wigs, and I think I'm gonna, you know, and just
you'll get there, Aisha.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just being honest, and I mean, until I'm able to kind of, you know, be self-employed and I don't have to deal with that, you know, those politics like that. It's just something that it's just always sticks with me, unfortunately. I just had a couple more questions, and then I know we may have some feedback or questions to ask each other. Have you ever had a time where you had to maybe there was a microaggression or something in regards to colorism or racism where you had to correct somebody and be like, hey, that wasn't cool? What made you think that was okay to say? Like, are there any instances that you can think of where you had to like correct somebody and be like, yo, that wasn't, you know, cool?
Recently, I had an experience at work.
Uh-oh. I think she froze.
Okay. Did anybody else want to speak to that? We got until she gets back, we got a comment from Cheryl Benson. You're equal because you are equal. Believe that. Yes, I do believe that in theory. How it plays out in real life, I'll be having these conversations with myself like, I don't know if I'm ready to do that. I mean, Brittany, you've worked in the corporate world for some time. Like, have you, you know, experienced things or had to like, you know, correct people, or maybe someone said something and you were like, I think that might have been kind of racist, or
Yeah, probably too many to think of. I can't think of anything necessarily related to colorism specifically, but you know, probably more stuff related to just racism versus colorism in the workplace.
Yeah, yeah. Drinker, you just came back in. You were about to chime in. I don't know if you're frozen again. It looks like she
It
might.
looks like she is frozen
Okay.
again.
But I was gonna say I thought about this. So I had an experience with a supervisor at work, and they were commenting on how they lost their purse and at this restaurant, at this establishment. And so they were frantically looking for it, and they got a call saying, hey, you know, you could come back to the restaurant and you're more than welcome to look for it. So when I got back, when she came in, she was telling me the story. And so she said by the time she got there, the purse had been found and everything that was in it was there. And so she looks at me and she says, I was really surprised. And she said it was 3 Black girls. And so she says that about how they were so nice. She was really surprised with 3 Black girls, everything in the person. She goes back into her office. And so then I sat there and I'm like something's not right. Like I feel a certain type of way. And I felt like, were you trying to imply or insinuate that like Black people, Black women steal, that you were shocked? Were you shocked because they were so nice, or were you shocked because they gave you your stuff back? And it just made me think, like, man, you know, this stuff is still pervasive, you know what I'm saying, in the culture. There are a lot of people who don't know Black people in real life from different socioeconomic backgrounds and different kind of cultural spaces and stuff like that, who make assumptions and who tend to learn about Black people from media and from statistics, but they don't know us for real in real life. Which is why I think situations like this are, and conversations like this are necessary and needed, because people do have a lot of ignorance and they aren't, you know, culturally aware. I don't know if anybody wanted to kind of speak to that again. Shout out to everybody who's chiming in. We appreciate it.
You know what, Aisha, I think, you know, just from what you just said, that just really kind of gave clarification to, like, you know, her view of, you know, Black as a whole, that feel. And so, you know, a lot of times it is, you know, it would be good in a very kind way because of the environment you're in to be like, you know, kind of calling out, but in a way of saying, so what would make, what would make you think that? You know, just kind of try. I like to really get into people's head anyway. So I want to know, like, you know, what is the thought behind that? Because it only helps them learn when we're willing to be able to, you know, like really kind of confront it, but confront it in a way where it's not, you know, making them feel like, you know, kind of awkward, but just really getting in their mind to say, like, how do you correlate that? You know, because they were that they were going to do that, or it wouldn't be there, or, you know, different things like that. Because it's funny, I went in the store the other day, and the, you know, man who owns the store is an Indian, and he gave me back too much. And when I got to the car, I'm like, this is not right. And I went back in, and before I could even say something to him, he got real defensive. And then I was like, wait, hold on. I'm like, you gave me too much, so I'm coming to give it back. And it was like his whole demeanor changed because he was shocked that I brought it back. You know, so I think it's just really helping people change the mindset and how they're viewing us as a culture overall. I'm not just saying Black people, but I'm saying for the majority of the part of it, whether it's white, Black, white, Indian, you know, Hispanic, like whatever, they view that more as like Black people steal. Like, no, that's not true. So I think, you know, we get opportunities like that. I would jump at it. I would jump at that one.
Yeah, you know, in the workplace is kind of tricky sometimes. And sometimes I watched this interview with 2 artists, and the host said something that I thought was so profound yet so simple. And he was saying, you know, he was speaking to in regard to this in regards to being a minority, and he said, you know what? He said, I'm tired of dimming my light for people, for the white majority. And he was like, for so long I went through life, I had to, you know, I don't want to confront this. I don't want to be deemed as the angry black woman or the angry black man. So I'm not gonna say nothing. I'm gonna just chill. I'm a real back.
Right.
Because, and then he was just saying, you know, I had to really confront that and be like, I'm tired of dimming my light. I'm gonna be, you know, who I am. And so for me, you said this here too, like with the hair piece, that was significant for me, because you feel like you have to conform to these standards of beauty. You have to, you know, whiteify yourself. I love all these videos that are out now about cold switching, which is like when I'm talking to my friends, to my homies, yeah, I'm talking a certain type of way. I'm using a certain type of slang, but when I'm in other environments, like a professional,
You switch.
yeah, you code switch. Like we all do it, right? We all learn to do it. But sometimes I feel like when the white majority does that with us, it's not, it's like sometimes it can be kind of like offensive. Like, what's up, home girl? Like, whoa, why do you feel you gotta say that to me? Like, you can just say hello, you know? Is it so you kind of see, you know, like how that's played out, but it's really interesting. But I'm glad that we have labels, we have terms and words and stuff for these things, and now it all kind of makes sense. Any closing thoughts? I was hoping Drika could hop back on. I think she might be having some technical issues, but I appreciate her feedback. Shout out to Drika. Shout out to everybody who's been hanging out with us in this chat. I appreciate you. Any questions for us from you guys who are on the live? Any questions? Any comments? Do you all have any questions or feedback or comments or something that came to mind that you wanted to bring up or talk about? I wanted to give the audience a chance to chime in, see if they had anything. Cheryl Benson, thank you for hanging out with us.
I had a question. Going back to something Sierra mentioned earlier, Aisha, when you, Drika's back. I don't know if she wants to.
Yeah, hold that thought for real. Drika, can you share what you were sharing about you had to correct somebody?
Oh yeah. Okay, so like right before all of the Black Lives Matter stuff like really started to blow up with the George Floyd situation, maybe like 2 weeks before. I forgot. I think I made like a regular for me, like just saying the word black people is so normal for me. I don't like cringe when I say it in front of white people because it's, I don't know, it's not a big deal to me. But I think I was saying something about black people, blah, blah, blah. It was so simple. And then my coworker was like, well, what do you guys want? One moment you guys want this, one moment you guys want that. And I'm like, what do you mean? She's like, black people, you guys are always complaining about something. I don't even remember the depth of it. Yeah, because I was in the middle of like counting money at my job. So I was like, I kind of can't pull off from this and like, you know, not go in on you, but like go in on you. But yeah, I'm just like, whoa, like that just showed a little bit of her true colors, because I never even I didn't expect that to come out of her mouth. Like that just completely caught me off guard. And then literally 2 weeks later, boom, George Floyd situation, protests, all that. So that was it.
And what trips me out about that is that people say stuff like that, you know what I'm saying? People, because I guess they think because, oh, slavery's over, it's done. Civil rights that happened is done. You want, like, what? And it's just like, you don't have to think about these things because you're part of the majority. You're part of the ethnic group that benefits from a lot of this stuff. You don't have to think about it. You know, there's a reason why there is a collective response when we see things like George Floyd and Ahmaud Arbery. Like that should tell you something. There's a reason why when we, you know, hear certain things, they're triggers for us, because we do have an inherited trauma from knowing the history. We also have our own experiences too, to see, man, the way that it is. You know, I have a friend, she always like to say there's one race. Yeah, true, but that's not true. It doesn't play itself out that way. And I think the tipping point when I was in high school, again, I'm in this predominantly white environment, I was fed up with a lot of the racism and things like that. I came home and I was 15, and I remember telling my siblings, look, y'all don't have to take this stuff from nobody. You need to clear the air and say something to these people when they're saying these things, say it.
Right.
So even if you're going to be viewed a certain way, because you don't have to tolerate this type of disrespect. And I think people, you know, correction doesn't always feel good, but it also is humbling, and it also puts you in a position to be a learner, because it's like, oh, I say stuff like this. Like
Right.
approaching people in that way. Anthony, and then Brittany, I want to get to your question too. Anthony says they're speaking from a place of privilege and
Absolutely.
that many times. Oh, of course, because it's like they could get away with it. They feel like without consequence. But if we respond, it's like, oh, you're trying
The angry Black girl.
Yeah, and it's just like, no, I'm not gonna dim my light. I'm not gonna tolerate that type of disrespect. If y'all get a chance, I'm watching American Soul right now, and it's the story of Don Cornelius and Soul Train. And he was like a shrewd businessman, but one thing that he was fighting to protect was like the dignity of Black people, because he appreciate about his stories that he fought to maintain that reputation. Like, this is Black owned. I'm not going to let anybody come in and taint it. I'm not going to sell it for millions of dollars, because I want it to remain Black and Black and like intact with just what we want, how we want to see ourselves shown and represented. And I really appreciated it. And I appreciate all these stories that are coming out where it's like, man, we really have been lied to, throughout history. But Brittany, I want to get to your question. That question for
Me.
Oh, okay. So leading into that, kind of what we've been talking about, I feel like for myself, I kind of live in this dichotomy between, like you mentioned in the workplace, between like suppression and kind of like to Corinne's point, like how she went back in the store and gave the gentleman back, the money. And so how I feel about that is like, man, why should I have to kind of be the one to fight against the stereotype, or to have to constantly prove somebody wrong? So it's kind of, my response to that has been kind of like, I think a suppression for me, and kind of throwing my hands up. But the question that I had, when Sierra brought up about playing into a hand or being brainwashed, and so my question is, do we think that we tell ourselves something that, I guess, white people really don't think about us? Like, for like, the example I'll give is, Asia, when you said like how you can't wear your hair a certain way to an interview. Is that just us kind of brainwashing, believing that we have to look a certain way to appeal to people? Or is that how, or will you really not get that job interview if you don't look white? Or is that kind of us? I don't know. That's my kind of thought.
Yeah.
I like that.
I think the times have changed where you could use an example you gave, because I can't speak for all hiring managers, right? But I think there was a time where a Black person could go into a job, be it a Black man with a full-on beard, and not get hired, or a Black woman with a fro and not get hired. Times have changed. I think in today's age, you can still walk into an interview like that and not get hired, because people are still prejudiced, and there's still discrimination, and you can't always prove intent. You can't prove what's on the inside of why people are making the decisions that they're making. However, I do think that there's been some progression in that you can go into an interview with a fro and get a job. You there's some people that are okay with your Blackness, be it a Black person that's hiring you, or even white or another race, from an ethnic background. I think you could do that. But to answer your first question, as far as us being brainwashed, I think we believe what we were told, and we were told that we were less than. Like our noses were shot off the statues, etc., in Egypt. We were told that Egyptians weren't dark. You know, we were told that, you know, dark skin is not the standard, which is why the Band-Aid was light. That's so we fed into that. We believed it about ourselves, and then we believed we weren't beautiful. And I just listened to all of you who appear to be darker than me speak to specific examples that you guys have lived through. And who told you that? Like, we had to have gotten that from the media. And if you heard it from your parents, like, you know, Aisha, why are you embracing your hair? I bet you're hearing that from the older generations because they were brainwashed. I think it's more of the younger generations that are now accepting and embracing who we are today because we can.
Yeah.
There's more flexibility to do so. So I guess from a brainwashing standpoint, we still got a long way to go.
I absolutely agree with you, Sierra, when you talk about the older generation, because it's really changing the mindset. It's definitely changing the mindset. And I, too, just really be transparent and honest. Like, I still struggle, even in being, you know, the age that I am, going into an interview and being confident. I think I'm more confident now. But if you had asked me maybe 5 or 10 years ago, I wasn't as confident as I am now going into an interview with red hair, or not that I would do with the red hair. I still would, you know, change just because that's just what it is. But I would not have the level of confidence in going in there and just believing that they would hire me even with red hair.
Right. And see, for me going into an interview, it's the hair thing, which is why I used to straighten it for every interview. But more than me being Black, because I'm light, right? So I recognize that in some regards, that is a privilege to be lighter, even in 2020. But more than the, you know, the Black features that call me out as Black, my issue is age, because there's ageism as well, right? So I'm 33, but I don't look 33. And so when I go into an interview, and if I'm asking for the type of money that I'm asking for, I am sometimes not showing up as confident. Well, I put on a facade anyway, but I underneath it may not be as confident because I'm thinking that this person on the other end thinks I'm a child, and I'm not. So that then impacts, and even in the workplace, oh, you young, you don't know much, you know, and that could be in the midst of Black people or white people. If you look young, you're insignificant, you don't know as much, you're not credible. And so that plays a part for me personally anyway.
We have a question from somebody in the chat. Shout out to Steph. She says, I'm in Minneapolis, and as I'm out and want people of color, I run into know that I see them and that they matter. I've said before, you matter, or I see you, or George Floyd's life mattered. And sometimes they stop and say thank you. Other times they just laugh back at me. My question is this: as a white person, is there a way I can respond, be intentional, or say something to them to reach out that would be meaningful to them, even though I don't know them? The rest of it got cut off because I think it is
It's long.
so, but that's basically her question. What is the way that she can respond and be intentional and be meaningful to them? Basically letting them know that they matter and I see you.
I think she could be more impactful in her own community, not in ours.
I was going to say, you guys, let me finish it for you. She said, I know everyone is different, but our city and nation is hurting, and saying nothing feels like I'm just perpetrating the white silence. I know there is so much hurt, pain. I'm curious, what would be meaningful to each of you?
Sierra, you had a comment?
Go ahead.
I think so. I think we all play a role when it comes to race in general. And we all have a passion that lends itself to a particular area. Some people that I know that are Black, their voice is more for our white counterparts. Like even in a corporate environment, they know how to speak to them in the way that can bring them on as allies, right? For us, that's not my role. I don't have a desire to convince white people to love us. I just don't. That's just not my thing. So for her, you know, you may get people that appreciate those type of comments, and then you may get people who don't. It's probably more impactful in your own community. So if you see racism, or you see someone like you who is mistreating someone who is not like you, call that out. That, I think that's more impactful, even though we may not see it. If there's an opportunity for us to see it, great. But that's probably the best way for you to be impactful, is in your own community, because that's where a lot of.
Oh, she got cut off a little bit. I'll chime in, and if anyone else wants to kind of add to that. I agree with what Sierra said. I think what has been meaningful for me, having real life conversations with my friends, some of my white friends and my friends who are of other like non-Black minorities, have been meaningful. To have like real life conversations with them where they can ask questions. I can ask them questions without like assumptions, like we just have an honest conversation. And I think, like she said, calling out the wrong, calling out the racism. If you hear someone say something ignorant, kind of correcting it on the spot, I think is helpful, because not only does it show that you care, but as a person who is white, and that, you know, is a privilege and that benefits from a lot of these systems that have been in place to, you know, kind of demean Black people and these kind of racist institutions. I think it does mean a lot when you can correct that within your own community, help kind of change the perception within that culture. I think that that's helpful. Words of affirmation are always welcome, but I think, again, correcting those things, like calling it out, hey, this is wrong what you said. Why did you think that was okay to say? I think that sends a really large message. Anyone else?
I agree with you, Aisha, that, you know, standing with the Black people who you may know and calling out things that may be wrong. I also think, I just know for me, what's been helpful with my white friends is to just be educated about what's going on. A lot of times they've taught me more about, you know, Black history and the history of oppression, the history of this. Than I have known. And so that's been really helpful to me. So just to kind of show that, hey, I'm here for you. So maybe it's not strangers, but maybe people that you are in community with, I think is probably more helpful to have those questions with, and just be a support system for.
And let me say this, I'm gonna pivot just a little bit. There's a term called white guilt, right? There's a term called white guilt, where white people a lot of times do not want to have these conversations about racism and ways you may have been complicit in that, because you have what's called white guilt. But I think it helps to confront that by having conversations and confronting those feelings. Like, why do I? Because usually when it comes to these conversations, it's not us that's really uncomfortable about it that wants to shut it down. It's usually the white majority, right, that gets uncomfortable with these conversations because of white guilt. But I think it's helpful to be able to have an honest conversation with yourself and with your people about, like, why does this bother me so much? Because I think once you start there, you can start unpacking a lot of things that maybe, you know, you didn't want to really acknowledge, and how you benefit, or how maybe you haven't called out things that you've seen because it's just so normalized too. And I think that that's you know, a huge part of it too. So just being willing to have the conversation. Some people aren't. I think a lot of the younger Black people might be more, you know, hostile and not willing. But if you find a Black person that's willing to have the conversation, I would say have it. Because again, we all learn from each other. Go ahead, Drika.
No, I was just gonna add on that. I agree with everything you guys are saying. Just definitely that education, that it all goes back to the education part, that we're all still learning. But just educating yourself about, especially just about small stuff, about like not every Black person is African American. I know that's something that shocks a lot of people, but it's a fact. And even at my job, when I'm like describing a guest, I'm like, hey, was this person Black? My coworkers sometimes will go, you just said that? I'm like, yes, that is, you know, it's a description of a person, they Black. So just even down to the little stuff, and just, I don't know, breaking those icebergs that just don't have to be there. Like, for example, you're white, I'm Black, you know, stuff like that. So yeah.
To your point, my husband is Jamaican American, and when I met him, when we started dating, And we, you start asking those questions. Oh, what's your favorite color? And I asked him what was his favorite food. I had never heard his favorite food is ackee and saltfish. I'd never heard of that in my life. I didn't even know what it looked like until I went to visit his family, and then I was able to have, that meal. So, we aren't a monolithic culture. We do come in different, like I said, hair textures and shapes and styles and complexions. And, my husband and I discuss all the time that how he says how Black basically denotes African descent. Like when I went to Dominican Republic, usually when you see the DR marketed, it's like white, features and stuff like that. But when I went to Dominican Republic, I was just shocked at all these beautiful Black people that I saw like on this island. So even kind of just, breaking down those stereotypes too, and just seeing that there's so much diversity, right? So people who look like me, some even darker, some lighter, whatever. Spanish, that's their native language and their culture, and the food, how the food is so different. But I think don't be afraid to ask questions. And be willing to have the conversation, because again, the people that are going to really change this, racism is not going away, but things can get better, and it can't begin to get better if we aren't willing to have the conversation and confront some stuff. But we can't be shut down and be forced to be silent if something is bothering us. You know what I'm saying? And we come into these spaces. Steph said, "Thank you for sharing, Sierra." Aisha, I agree. Absolutely, speaking into my own community. I also recognize the need to educate myself, and I'm taking a considerable amount of time to do that. Just curious as I'm in public and see the heaviness. Okay. We got cut off again. I don't know if Corinne can see it. Thank you.
It's just she see the heaviness and want to say more than just hi. And
that's not gonna fix it.
And you can't fix it, but I think also just to kind of speaks on top of what has been said, you just have a lot of people that even though you see the heaviness, that is weighing upon them. And, when you have someone like that, because a part of what she said before is how they would laugh. And it's like, you have to remember that you're dealing with different maturity levels. And so when you're dealing with different maturity levels, you just embrace that moment of what you have. And then, like you say, look for other opportunities that a door open to be able to even go deeper, because that may not be an opportunity to go deeper because they're not ready. Mm-hmm. But to just know, like when you walking into it, not, about the, white guilt thing you were talking about, but just when you're walking into it, where your heart is and where you're going with that. And so you may have people that laugh, you may have people that, really, want to have that conversation. So you just kind of be open and sensitive to what's happening in that moment. And then embrace the time.
Yeah. Yeah, Janie. Hey, Janie. Miss you, Janie. I'm glad you chimed in to the convo. Janie asked, have any of you women read the book entitled I'm Still Here? I have not heard of that book. Dropped the link, and then she said, if so, is that a good resource for us as white persons who are longing to learn more about racism in our modern day? They're really good. There are actually quite a few films. So there's a film called I Am Not Your Negro that is currently on Netflix, which is really good. That one is really good. There's so many books. I always have trouble thinking of books, but I'm Not Your Negro is on Netflix. The Help is always a good one.
Hidden Colors.
Yeah, Hidden Colors documentary is a good one. There's one about Chicago at a crossroads. You can watch that online. That one is really, really good. I always mispronounce the guy's name. He wrote a book called Between the World and Me by Ta-Nehisi Coates. He wrote that book. The New Jim Crow, The 13th. When They See Us, so Netflix, in response to a lot of this George Floyd and Ahmaud Arbery, a lot of the stuff that was happening, they have a section of movies dedicated to educating, white people, just people in general, about Black culture and just all the kind of like turmoil and trauma and even accomplishments that Black people have made and different things. So Netflix has done a good job of being, I guess, more inclusive and having these different varieties of voices. That's a good one.
Prime offers the same thing, and right now, or it's been free. So they have a section, you know, that have like black movies, like The Hate You Give. My daughter wanted to watch that, but I didn't want to pay the $20 to rent it. And when I went into it, because of what's going on, you know, in our current climate, it was free. So all those like black movies, even on Prime, if it's geared towards some type of black trauma, it seems more like, versus an accomplishment, it's free.
Yeah. And then Janie, even, I mean, learning about, me and my husband was just talking about the 3/5 compromise, right? What that meant in the country for Black people to not even be considered human, you know? And I think, and we can drop some more things in the chat. I can DM you too for some more kind of recommendations, stuff that's helpful, Corinne. I know I can't fix it. I'm just wanting to be kind and intentional. Saying nothing just seems wrong. Yeah, I think speak up and say something. So I want to kind of, do you guys have any closing thoughts? Thank you all for everyone who chimed in. I'm going to have more conversations like this on Facebook Live, just about other topics. Any closing thoughts, guys? Things you want to say?
I'm curious you guys' thoughts on this. So, in talking about the whole topic of reclaiming beauty, or even reclaiming how us as Black see ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
One thing that I have done to kind of help shape that is to maybe not read books that kind of paint our history as this like oppressed people, but trying to find things that paint us in a picture of, I don't know, like not oppressed. Yeah, like what accomplishments have we done, so that, because I'm tired of always seeing, you know, myself as a slave, but what else am I, you know? So I'm just curious as people's thoughts. I know that's just kind of how I've tried to help reshape my thinking about things.
Yeah, after Black Panther, the last traumatizing movie I saw was Detroit, and I couldn't do it. It was just, it was agonizing. And and then I saw like the 13th was kind of like the last kind of negative thing that it was a good documentary to see. But when They See Us came out, when that came out, I couldn't watch it because
I haven't watched it.
I can't. And I know a lot of people said, I know you can't, but I couldn't. I just couldn't.
I can't.
I think that when I just want to say Wakanda because it just stands out, but Black Panther, I always end up calling the movie Wakanda. When Black Panther came out, it was so triumphant for Black people that I was just like, I want to see more of that. You know, when Hidden Figures came out, this Aretha movie, I'm definitely going to see the Aretha film, you know, Queen of Soul. I think movies like that too are helpful for me because I can't do another, I don't want to see another Rosewood. I never seen 12 Years a Slave. I tried to watch it. I couldn't do it. That's just me. I think for different people, they say this is a part of history. We need to learn this. This is helpful. But I'm personally, I'm glad that they make those movies because one, I know that they give Black actors jobs. They tell stories of history that maybe we didn't know before, like Birth of a Nation, the story of Nat Turner. It was traumatizing, but it was also inspiring to see how for him,
They overcame.
Yeah, to see that. And it was, impactful. So I think there are some stories that are helpful and beneficial, but just for me and my taste, I just personally, I can't do it anymore. Like I have to make more Hidden Figures. I'll go see it and support it.
Great Debaters, Thurgood.
Yeah.
I like Great Debaters.
Even Selma was, I remember after I saw Selma, I was crying, and my husband could tell you this. I was crying in the parking lot when the movie was over. I just, I couldn't do. It was such a good film, though, an inspiring film, but sad. Infinity. I just received. They Came Before Columbus by Ivan Van Sertima. It discusses the African presence in ancient America. I hope to expand my students' knowledge beyond slavery. Amen. So there's another recommendation. Thank you, Infinity.
And that's important. Our history didn't start with slavery.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Amen.
what's his name? Kevin Hart. I don't know if you guys saw. He did a little short. I don't know what it was. It was something. I watched it on Netflix, I think it was.
I saw it.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. It was pretty educational. I think it's like kid friendly too. Like it, kind of meets everybody in the middle. So that was pretty educational as well. And it had a lot of triumphant moments for Black people that wasn't just like, around slavery and stuff like that. So
yeah.
And comedic.
I actually
comedic.
had a question for Drika. Earlier you mentioned that like for you growing up in South Florida, it wasn't necessarily about color, but just more so like African features or whatever. But when you looked at your sister, you were like, well, at least I'm not that dark. So I'm South Florida. Are you Haitian? Are you Haitian?
That last part kind of cut up for me. Oh no, but my dad, he's from the West Indies. He's from Grenada.
Oh, Grenada. Okay.
But there are a lot of,
I was actually going to ask you, being from South Florida, it seemed like, and tell me if I'm right or wrong, like colorism more so wasn't an issue. And then if it wasn't, I guess what shaped you in your mind to say, well, at least I'm not that dark as your sister?
I don't know if I would say it wasn't an issue. Because there's still like traces of it that I experienced. I guess it just wasn't like something like big for me. I don't really know how my siblings were affected by it or anybody else in my household, but I don't know. I guess when I started to go to summer camp, and daycare and stuff like that, the kids that I would be around, they would like just, I guess, make comments about certain people being this color and that color. I don't really remember them too much really making fun of each other for skin color. Like, I think I only really noticed people who stood out were the really, really, really dark ones or the light skinned ones. So if you were light skinned, you were, prettier, or you were more handsome. But if you were darker, you were assumed to be uglier. But because like I fell in the middle spectrum, even though I'm still darker, I still fell in the middle spectrum. I guess I wasn't really like targeted with that because I was more so like targeted for not being cute and being chubby and stuff like that. So yeah, then there's like a lot of Caribbean influences down here. It's like a melting pot. So I don't know if that had anything to do with it either. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm moving to South Florida. That's my husband's hometown. And one of the things that I when I came back to Chicago, I told my friends, I said, this was the first time I went to someplace in the United States and I have to think about my Blackness at all. When I went down there, Black people were asking me, oh, what are you, Bahamian, you Trinidadian? And I'm like, nah, I'm just Black. I didn't grow up with that type of, Chicago is so segregated. I didn't grow up with that type of diversity. So it was kind of like interesting hearing those questions. And then that's when, because I was super ignorant kid from the south side of Chicago. I only knew Black and white because those were the worlds that I moved in. So when I met my husband and I went to Miami, I'm like, oh, and I'm like, that's why that Dominican person is darker than me, but they say they Dominican and they're not Black because it's, that's their nationality, that's their culture. I didn't even understand that until I went down there and started having these conversations that Black means African. So me and my husband are both Black, but he's Jamaican American. I'm African American. And, having those distinctions in place. And that really made me appreciate a lot of this. And it's interesting, if you guys get a chance, watch this same type of conversation. It was a really good one. It was Latin American women who were Afro-Latina having the same conversation. But it's just interesting, these are things that I think we're going to have to continue to discuss and talk about to kind of correct what's been passed down. And I think conversations like this are a good start. So with that being said, if you guys have any more questions or feedback, Cheryl, thank you for your feedback. She said you ladies have done a great job this evening. I would love to see more of this and hopefully to be a part of as well. Definitely, for sure. Thank you. We will let you know. Any closing thoughts? Brittany, Corinne, Sierra, Drika?
I know. I did want to ask Sierra a question. Like you mentioned, you would get comments about like assumptions about you because you were light skinned and how I guess you may have thought you were better. And you talked about how it affected your self-esteem. Like I wanted like more clarity like on that. Like did it make you feel like you needed to like dim yourself or like humble yourself more than what you were? Like how did those type of comments affect you? Because I haven't really heard that perspective. So I'm curious.
I did actually dim myself more. I'm still, from a dimming standpoint, I'm still working on that, even in corporate. I have a bit of a rebel mindset, but it's still a process because my default wants me to dim myself. But yeah, I remember maybe I was more so like in fourth and fifth grade where I would hear, "Oh, you think you're better," and for me it was really out of left field. Like, where did that come? Why would you say that? What did I do to make you think that I think anything about anybody? Because I went to a few in the fifth grade. I went to 3 different schools. I was new to the school in the fourth grade as well, and I would get these type of comments from kids that I just met. So it's not like I grew up with you and we've been in the same class for 3 years. We were really young, but I also just met you. So it made me quiet. Only really young though, because I don't have a quiet personality. Eventually I would come out of my shell, but I think I was quieter younger because of that. Because of the, "Oh, you think this way," or you are better because you're lighter. And I just didn't understand. Or as a child, I wasn't reaping the benefits of being lighter because I still had to go home to a Black household and there was an array of colors at home. So I didn't understand that type of logic. Now that I'm older am a little bit more educated, I understand that thinking, and that even being that young in the fourth grade, that was coming from their parents and whoever else they were
Mhm.
living with. And then it was just being projected, kids projecting what we got from home at school. And then of course it just putting two and two together. If darker skin if my darker skinned brothers and sisters are being mistreated because of their features and because of their darker skin, I'm sure that's going to hurt them. And if that's hurting them, hurt people hurt people. So then you may take it out on me, your sister, even though I'm lighter, as opposed to us
Mhm.
addressing the issue or the root, which is not us. We're not the problem, right? So that's kind of how I view it now. But I think because of my personality, I kind of broke out of that quiet shell by the time I got to high school, because I'm not quiet anymore.
Thank
We got
you.
a question, y'all, from for anyone who wants to take it. This is from Tanisha Ramirez. Thank you for your question, Tanisha. She asked, did any of you run into situations when it came to your name, such as jobs or strangers looking at you strange? And if so, how did you go about it?
Me.
Rodriguez.
My government name is Rodrika. And that was actually something I was really insecure about. I was like, why would you name me that? And my mom would get so offended, like, because I'm the oldest. So I was like, I'm the experiment child. You just put any name on me. Like all of my siblings, they have, I guess you could say like more regular standard names. My sister has a Spanish name, but everybody else has like simple names, easy to pronounce, easy to spell. And then for me, it's like I had that insecurity, like with filling out job applications. I used to be like, oh my gosh, they're not gonna hire me because of my name. And then my mom, she'd be like, well, why don't you go by your middle name, Monet? And I'm like, well, then why did you name me Rodrika in the first place if you're gonna tell me to go by my middle name? And then I'm like, I got this hood girl name. They're gonna think I'm a hood girl. And then I always get, oh, well, you don't seem like a Rodrika. And I'm like, well, what does that mean? But in my head, I'm like, I know what you're thinking. So it was just so many things around that. But eventually I ended up, again, that I just ended up embracing, not that I had like this perfect experience being Black, because there's still other struggles that I had. But I just ended up learning to, again, embrace that, own that, and turned it into my artist name. You know, change my real name up into my artist name. So yeah.
Yeah, my name, I hated my name growing up. And then when I was like a preteen, probably like 13, my friend used to tease me. She was like, no, if your name end in SHA, that's ghetto. I was like, first of all, my name is not ghetto. My name has meaning. I could tell you the meaning of my name because I was like, my name is Arabic and Indian. It has a meaning. Blah, blah, blah. And I used to hate my name growing up because mostly just because it would always get mispronounced. And I think my maiden name is Golar, Gholar. And I think if you saw my name on paper, Aisha Golar, it could look Middle Eastern. Like I felt like you couldn't really tell what I was. The only thing that I've experienced is I did a lot of writing at one of my former jobs, and you know, sign my maiden name, and you know, I was a contributor. I would write a lot of articles and stuff like that. And when I went to campus, and a lot of the people, non-Black people, they met me for the first time, they were like, "Oh, you are Aisha," and I'm like, "Yeah." But I didn't know, and I'm already on the defensive, right? Because I think when you work in sometimes predominantly white environments, you just kind of condition a certain way, like to, and it was almost like I wanted to be like, yes, I write well and I speak well too. You know what I mean? Like kind of like that. And I didn't really know how to like take that. Because again, they're just seeing my work, but they aren't seeing me. So I sometimes people might be taken aback. But again, Brittany, it could be a situation where I am assigning something or ascribing something to someone, and it's not really what it is. Maybe it's just, oh, you're Aisha, like a pleasure to meet you. But again, I think Black people, we always live in a dichotomy though. Like we kind of always do, because it's like there's reality, and then there's how reality plays out for you, and then you see it don't always have the same kind of. So I think I'll always wrestle with that, like a part of me. Like I told my husband, because of my experience, this is based off my experience, I would never, ever, I don't care how great the school is, I don't care in terms of academia, if it's high rank, I would never send my child to a predominantly white school or predominantly school, like a school that's not, if it's diverse and mixed and multicultural, yes, I'll do that. But I don't ever want to send my child to, I definitely rather send them to an all Black school than an all white school, or school where they're going to be like the Black kid in the class. I just don't want to do that to my children. And I'm not saying it's wrong for any other parents to do that to their kids. Just from my experience, I just wouldn't want to do that. I wouldn't want to do that. Tanisha says, I always got, you don't look like a Tanisha, or I really wanted to see what a Tanisha Ramirez looks like. Yeah, those are just ignorant comments, right? Like, you know what I'm saying? What's in the name? Again, what King said rings so true today. I don't want to judge people by the color of their skin. I don't want to judge them by their name, but the content of their character. And I think that still rings true today. And again, that's something where we like correct people's behavior.
Yes.
But to bring up names is just opening a whole nother can of worms, because we don't even have our names. We were stripped from our culture. Our names, my maiden name is Jones. That is a slave name. And my married name is Hayes. It's another common slave name. So it's like to go into even our first names, I think Black people, we can get creative with our names. And I think that might be in the blood. It might be stemming from somewhere way back when we was on the continent of Africa. But so we get creative. We're an extra type of people. We just
And
extra.
just define the standard, like you said, and acted define. I'm naming my daughter Rodrika.
Yeah, it's like
Because it could have been
we're
Megan. It could have
trying.
been.
It's like we're digging deep trying to find some type of connection to even a name. Now, my name, Sierra, I really don't have issues with it. People don't mispronounce it. I purposefully named my children what we would call common or standard names, which are kind of like European names, so they wouldn't have issues getting jobs. So my oldest daughter name is Cameron. My middle child name is Chloe. My son's name is David, but he's the fifth, so he's just named after his father. I think if I had a different, or if I had the mindset now, back when I was having children, they probably would have some different names.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Well,
Yeah,
thank
that's the
you, guys.
mindset I'm on. Oh my bad.
Go ahead, Kristen.
No, I was just saying, like, that's the mindset I'm on now. I'm just like, man, I'm like embracing my blackness and the creativity that I have. Like, I don't have to be limited to the name Sarah or John. You know, like I can venture outside of that and, you know, have fun with it. That was it.
Yeah. Any other comments and stuff? Thank you all for your comments and your questions. I definitely plan on having more of these conversations just about stuff in the culture. Anthony said my last names are Scottish and Irish. My dad is actually trying to trace our name back to Africa. He's encountered some challenges because like the records in the US only go back so far. So there's only so much he can do. But I mean, I hope it's something that he's able to accomplish before he leaves this earth. Because I certainly would like to know what, you know, country, you know, what tribe. It would just be really interesting just to know history. Because it is so important and it does shape, you know, who we are and our present and stuff. But any other comments, ladies? I want to thank you all for agreeing to participate in this conversation. If you have some topics you'd like me to discuss, feel free to drop them in the chat. Anything else? Any closing thoughts?
thank you for having us, Aisha. It was nice speaking with you all. It was beautiful meeting you, Brittany, Corinne, and Drika. I've enjoyed the conversation.
Me
Same.
too.
I would second that.
Cool.
Thank you so much for having us.
Yeah, thank you guys. Thank you all again for watching in the chat. You can share this. This will stay up on my Facebook page. It's public, so you can share it to anybody's page, or if you got a group chat or whatever, feel free to share it there. And I hope that you all can continue the conversation even after this one is done. Thank you, Anthony. She said, enjoyed you ladies. And I am signing off. So everyone, you have a good night.
Thank
Have a
you.
good one, guys.
Bye.
Bye.